Men of Reddit, what creepy things have women done to you? When I was in medical school, a girl 3 years my junior started obsessing over me. Initially it was kinda mild in the "I have a crush on you" sense. She'd ask my friends about me and messaged me on SocMed from her friends' accounts. Chalked it up to being young. Then she started to mess with girls that I'm close to, including my sister, telling them that they don't deserve me and that I'm hers. Also started hanging out at my neighbor's place and refused to leave until they call me out for some stupid reason and whatnot. And she'd hang out in the neighborhood I live in and pretend that we've bumped into each other on accident. Oh, and I would occasionally post music I like on FB or Twitter, and she would post music of her own as a response because she's convinced that all those music I post is for her. Then in my final year she wrote this 80-page letter in which she professed her love and compared me to some miscast. Oh, and the best part, it's been a few years since then. A few months ago she started working where I am. The nightmare f***ing continues. Searched my apartment, phone, camera, computer, and everything else I owned the first time I left her alone in my place because she wanted to know more about me. She ended up creating a version of my personality she interpreted through my things. Co-worker at a diner told me she was leaving her boyfriend for me just out of the blue one day. Said it in front of the cooks, manager, and took customers. Barely knew her, had worked with her for 4 months on rotating shifts, minimal actual contact or dialogue between us. Didn't even know her last name. I was pretty rowdy at that time, but I was always quiet at work, and I kept to myself. Thought maybe she was screwing with me, or her boyfriend was in earshot, and she was trying to f with him. Got home that night, and she was standing outside my apartment with a suitcase. No idea how she got my address. I told her to go home, and she quit the diner the next day. It was super weird. I was dragged into the manager's office and interrogated twice, tried to explain that I had no clue what was going on. About a week later, either her boyfriend or ex showed up with 2 of his friends in the parking lot and kicked the st out of me as I was leaving work. To this day I'm still confused about the whole thing. I woke up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom and my GF followed me and sat outside the door to wait for me, and I didn't notice. Opening up my bathroom door to see a humanoid figure sitting in the dark by my feet at 3 in the morning scared the ever-living st out of me. Girl I dated made a voodoo doll out of her used tampon and my hair shavings from my electric razor that she said she'd use on me if we ever broke up. She buried it inside a lunchbox at the beach and drew a map to find it. She's now married, mother of 2. I was super drunk, passed out on my friend's couch. His friend was there also. I woke up to find her straddling me and pouring whiskey down my throat. It was super not needed. I was destroyed. Apparently she had sex with me that night. Can't say I consented as I wasn't conscious. As a young teenager, this big girl would aggressively grope me every chance she got on the school bus. The bus driver wouldn't believe me because women don't do that and or guys always want it. One day I was walking to my seat. She grabbed my crotch so hard it hurt and said, "You're not a real man until you split dark oak." She was a black girl, in case that pickup line didn't make sense. I started walking home or bumming rides after that. Oh man, when I was younger, 22 I think, I signed up to work an event at the job I was at. I had to work a table with an activity and help these Girl Scouts craft something. So these 2 13-year-old girls came up and started making crafts. Then they asked me for my phone number and I told them no. Then they asked my name and I told them no. They constantly asked for both of those and I refused. A female coworker came up and started chatting with me. The girls then asked her for my info and she gave it away. I was pissed. And thinking back, I'm still pissed. One of them started texting me immediately. I told her to stop and she laughed and walked away. I blocked her number. The next day I got a FB friend request from her and blocked it. Then I started getting messages from her. The same coworker gave her my work email address and MySpace account. She was very persistent in getting me to talk to her and I hated it. Finally I messaged her troop leader and told her about what was going on. She just said she'd take care of it and I never heard from her again. I think not just her age, but how persistent she was what creeped me out the most about her. I was at work when a customer came in. She was overweight and looked pretty slobby. Hair was a mess, wearing pajamas, a mismatched pair of shoes. She came up to me and asked how she looked because she was about to start driving for Uber and wanted to know if she looked presentable. I just said sure and tried walking away, but she wouldn't let me leave. I don't know how we ended up here, but she started talking about how her skin can't handle most soaps and had to use some alternative to it. Can't remember what it was. She shoved her arm in my face telling me to smell it, to see that it didn't smell bad. I politely declined, but she did it again and made it clear she wasn't moving until I smelled her arm. I finally did, said it was fine, and walked away as fast as I could. Was definitely one of the most uncomfortable moments I've had with someone. I dated an artist a few years back. I got a notification on Instagram that she tagged me in one of her paintings, and so I go to check it out. I see that it is a painting of her cutting off my dick while she's wearing a bunny suit. I then check out her Instagram story. It's a video of the painting in progress, and she's actually wearing a bunny suit while painting it. I was at the grocery store with my wife, then 2-year-old daughter, and twin then infant sons. My wife was pushing a double stroller with our daughter and one of the boys in it, and I was carrying the other, who was calmly cuddled up to my shoulder. We're in the produce section when some random middle-aged woman that I had never seen before spots us, makes a beeline towards me, stretches out her hands, and tries to take my kid out of my arms. She didn't look at my wife or me, didn't say a word to either of us. She just literally tried to grab my son from me with no prompting or invitation whatsoever. I stepped away from her and shielded my kid. My wife chased her off. That wasn't the only weird, creepy middle-aged / older woman to come out of the woodwork when the twins were still babies, but she was the most frightening. After 3 or so dates started talking like we were engaged. When are we going on vacation together? Should we get married in a church? How many would you like us to have? I called it off after that. So she threatened to tell the police I raped her. Luckily nothing ever came of that. Had a disagreement over buying her some new outfit dress thing. With the supposed victory going to me with we don't have the money right now and we'll see next paycheck compromise. About an hour later, while I was cooking dinner she came up and apologized, then came in for a hug, which started nice and somewhat affectionate, but ended with her pulling her arms away very quickly across my back. This was to have the 2 razor blades she had sliced to deep slashes across my back. She ran away and locked herself in the bathroom. I called 911 and went got stitches and all the medical things. Had insurance, thankfully. Obviously the relationship ended then and there. Looking back like 15 years later, it is really strange as we were together for about 3 years and didn't have any major fights or physical altercations before that happened. It was so trivial with some massive escalation, but in the end it taught me that yes, I can cut someone out of my life, figuratively. Woo puns. A girl I had been dating for just a couple weeks invited me to her mom's house for dinner. Halfway through dinner I finally noticed that they had printed out pictures of me from MySpace. This was back when MySpace was normal, put them in frames, and randomly interspersed them with other family pictures throughout the house. They were laughing hysterically at my reaction. I told them, very plainly and very seriously, that if it was a joke, it was hilarious. But if it wasn't, they never actually answered whether it was a joke or not. We didn't date much longer than that. This girl who works at my mom's work, their servers, always tells my mom she's going to marry me and thinks I'm cute. It wasn't a big deal at first, but it got out of control for a little bit there. Commenting heart eyes and inappropriate remarks on any post my mom made with me tagged in it. She finally followed me on Instagram and liked every one of my 700 something posts. And here comes the worst part. She starts messaging me through Instagram and I didn't reply once, but she begins having a conversation with herself with me in my inbox. Like asking questions and answering them for herself and replying as if I said something and saying things like I heard from your mom that you're going through a rough time, and opens up to me about her past, which is a long and inappropriate thing to send to someone who hasn't even replied. This is among many other creepy things she's done to me. She doesn't bother me anymore though, just the occasional like on a picture. Made a note for this. It's become the dark event that's divided our town. It happened to a friend I knew. Real bright, had a well-paying job. One day he parties with this girl. She claimed he raped her, but refused to speak with police. Despite this and despite the fact that he had recorded a phone call with her admitting she was lying, his life was ruined. I watched him go on a downward spiral, and I had a couple decade-long friends turn on me just for being around him. Well, a year and 6 months after the allegations, he started getting phone calls from her, demanding money. He agreed to meet her in a hotel room. Once she arrived, he shot and killed her, then turned the gun on himself. It's taken a long time to cope, and it scares me how moments after any allegation, people form a mob for justice. I know victims should be encouraged to come forward, but when a guy has proof, the girl wouldn't go to the police. She willingly met him in a hotel room after essentially trying to blackmail him. That should be enough to prove one's innocence. I lost a good friend. I had a 20-minute conversation with a woman at an airport bar. Pleasant enough conversation. We were both a little flirty, and she was attractive and seemed nice. I left to catch my flight, and while I did sort of regret not getting her number, I didn't think much of it again. A couple of weeks later she showed up at my house banging on the door at 10 PM. She had Facebook stalked me, which is acceptable I guess, but because I don't use Facebook very often, I didn't see or reply to her messages. So, like any sane person would do, she figured out where I lived, got on an airplane, and came to confront me about the situation. At that point I was already way over the whole thing, but she was basically stuck in my city for the next 3 days until her return flight, and she didn't have much money, so I kinda had to let her stay with me. It was pretty awkward, but it wasn't all terrible. I mean, she was a nice girl and pretty as a peach, but I was just too weirded out. If she had written me a letter or waited until I saw her messages, then we would probably be married right now. I couldn't get past the crazy stalker behavior though. I was a limo driver for a number of years. One time this very drunk girl climbed through the divider into the front seat. I was on a fairly busy stretch of highway with nowhere to immediately pull off. There was a lot going on the road, so I really couldn't do anything but try to reason with her. I was seriously afraid she would bump me, or the wheel, or do something that would cause an accident. After she worms her way up front, she starts rubbing my thigh and telling me that I should leave my girlfriend for her. All the while her friends in the back were egging her on and thinking it was funny as hell. I pushed her hand off my upper thigh/cock region several times before I finally managed to get to an exit where I could stop. It took me threatening to cancel the trip for her to get in the back of the car. Not the only time something like this happened, but it was the only time a girl risked all of our lives to make it happen. Usually there's one reasonable person in the group to keep the crazes in check. Ex-girlfriend cheated on me with an abusive ex-boyfriend from a few years ago in high school. Found out and living an hour away. I planned to break up that weekend when I saw her again. Confronted her and she went crazy and tried using a blender on my dick before it unplugged from the wall. Got her out of my apt and went to work. Came home that night to find she broke in my apt and stole my cat. Never did see the cat again, but she is now overweight, baby to the ex-BF she cheated on me with, and the ex fled the state. Family kicked her out of the house, and I'm doing just fine in life now.